gonna leave me as soon as I turn the camera on. Hey guys, my name is Kelsey. Welcome back to my channel. Today we are talking about all of the books I read in January. I had a really good reading month. January is always really good for me. I read a total of 11 books, only DNF'd one, and nothing below a 3-star rating. I read 3 3-star books, 6 4-star books, and 2 5-star books. 7 of the books were adult fiction, 5 were young adult, and 3 were audiobooks, and the rest were all print books. This is the first wrap up on my channel, so I'm still figuring out how I want to do things. So I'm going to start with my lowest rated books and work up to my highest rated books. And we'll just get my DNF out of the way. It was House of Names by Colm Toibin. I only got like 15 pages into it before I stopped. It was written in first person past present tense and also first person past perfect tense. It was super annoying. That bothered me right off the bat. And then the book started with this super gruesome event, and then it went back in time. And that annoys me too, because I already know how everything's gonna end up. So why bother? On to the 3-star books. First up is The Way I Used to Be by Amber Smith. This is a young adult contemporary about a girl who is raped by her brother's best friend, and then it follows her the next couple of years and the changes she goes through and what happens to her as a result of this trauma. I only gave this 3 stars because the writing itself was just okay, and I felt like the author skipped over all of the events. It's like we read about the trauma, then you would skip a couple months and it would be the start of her sophomore year, then the start of her junior year, and you would see the result of all these events that happened throughout the year, but not the events themselves. So overall, I just wasn't impressed. Next up is Willful Machines by Tim Floreen. This is a young adult sci-fi. The premise sounded really cool to me. As soon as I read it, I added it to my wish list. It's about the closeted son of the president in a future where robots are just a part of life now, and he is being threatened by this artificially intelligent creation that has escaped after killing his mother. Like, really, that's all it took to hook me. Our main character, Lee, is the only character in this book that I think was fleshed out very well. I really connected to him and his decisions made a lot of sense, but the other characters didn't make a lot of sense, especially the love interest in this book. Their relationship, I hate to use this word, but it was insta-love. They meet a few times, you get a little bit of their conversations with each other, but you don't understand why their connection is so intense. Like, it's one of those where they meet up 3 or 4 times and suddenly they're willing to die for each other. That doesn't happen. Also, the twists at the end, like all of the things that were supposed to be big reveals, were pretty obvious. And I don't try to guess things. I don't try to figure things out as I read because I like to be surprised. Next up was an audiobook I read, Talking as Fast as I Can by Lauren Graham. I highly recommend the audiobook format because I love Lauren Graham. If you're not familiar with her, she was in Gilmore Girls and Parenthood and Bad Santa, if that's what you're into. It's kind of a memoir. I think the subtitle is From Gilmore Girls to Gilmore Girls and Everything in Between. And it was really entertaining. There are definitely funny parts. She just has a funny personality, and she narrates the audiobook herself. I just felt there were a few parts that were like trying too hard to be funny, and the writing was overall just okay. I only gave this 3 stars, but I will say if you are the kind of person that likes memoirs, audiobook memoirs specifically read by the author, I would still recommend this because it's definitely worth your time. It just wasn't overly impressive. Okay, now on to 4-star books. The Madness Vase by Andrea Gibson. This is a book of poetry, and I don't read a lot of poetry, but this was very good. There were a few that I didn't connect with really well, but poetry is very personal, so that's not surprising. But there were so many of these that were so relatable and so powerful. If you've got a keen eye, you'll notice that suddenly everything looks different, and that's because my camera stopped recording, but I just kept talking until I got through everything. So we're gonna try this again. This is so annoying because I was fucking eloquent on some of these, alright? I don't know where I left off talking about this book of poetry, but in case it cut off, this was great, and if you're interested in poetry, you should check it out. Okay. Next is The Marsh King's Daughter by Dionne. This is a thriller about a woman who is the product of an abduction. Her mother was kidnapped as a teenager, and she was born as a result of that relationship. This follows 2 timelines. One of this woman as an adult, she's married and has 2 kids, and her father has just broken out of prison. The other timeline is when she's a child, growing up in this isolated place, and exploring how she feels as a kid. My favorite part of this book was this kind of exploration between childhood and adulthood, because when she's a child, we as a reader know that her mother was abducted and is not there by choice and did not have a child by choice, but she does not understand this. She doesn't know that her mother was abducted, so she thinks this is normal. She thinks living in the middle of nowhere is fine. She doesn't know about modern technology, and she doesn't know that her father is a very bad person. She looks up to him and admires him, and it's interesting to look at that attitude from a child and seeing her now as an adult and knowing that what her father did was wrong, but still having those innate feelings of admiration. But it's also a thriller, and you're looking at her as an adult, and her father is broken out of prison, and she is trying to protect her family from him because she knows that he will not just let her be. My next 4-star book is You by Caroline Kepnes. This is another thriller. I finally picked this up because I wanted to watch the Netflix adaptation. If you don't already know, this is a story about a stalker told in the second person, which is fairly unique. He is speaking from his perspective and talking about you as if you are the person that he is stalking. What's really interesting about this book is that because you're in his mind and looking at things from his perspective, you know how dangerous his thoughts are. You know that he's a bad person. You know that he is stalking this girl and setting things up and manipulating his way into her life. But there are still times where you empathize with him and you have to talk yourself out of it, which I think is just like a condition of being human. We want to empathize with other people and understand where they're coming from. But on this level, you really shouldn't. But the way the story is told, there are parts where he's insecure and parts where he feels rejected, and it's like human nature to be like, oh, poor guy, and you really have to talk yourself out of it. So I thought that was really interesting, but definitely not for the faint of heart because it is violent and there's a lot of sexual aggression, so beware of that. Next is Saints and Misfits by S.K. Ali. This is a young adult contemporary following a Muslim girl in her late teens trying to navigate this now complicated world. Her parents are divorced and she doesn't feel like she fits in with her father's new family, but she also feels like her mother favors her brother, and she's struggling with some of her friendships in her Muslim community and also struggling with having feelings for a boy that is outside of her faith. She's also dealing with the aftermath of being sexually assaulted by someone in her very small Muslim community. So it discusses that pretty in depth and the struggles of wanting to confront her abuser but also not wanting to damage this community that she's in by accusing someone who is fairly highly regarded. And I think that does that really realistically. It also deals with the feelings of like internalized shame following sexual assault. Especially for our main character, Jana is her name, because she wears a hijab and she is trying to reconcile her desire to be modest and also feeling ashamed when she feels that she fails in her modesty. The only downside of this book is I feel like the end is really pushy toward this like idea of being strong and how like the only way to be strong is to confront or reveal your abuser in a big dramatic way. And I just don't think that's true, and it's kind of a problematic message to send, especially for people in difficult situations where they might not be able to confront or reveal their abuser. But other than that, really enjoyed this. Another 4-star book is The Cabin at the End of the World by Paul Tremblay. This is another thriller that follows a family that is vacationing in like a remote area of New Hampshire, I think. And it's a gay couple and their adopted daughter. And while they are vacationing in this remote area, these 4 strangers appear, force their way into their house, and tell them that the world is ending, and in order to stop it, this couple must make a choice, or a sacrifice. It is super dark, and throughout the whole book, you're trying to determine if, is the world really ending? Are these people just cultists? Do they have a previous connection with this couple? Why would they be doing this? The tension, slowly builds throughout the whole book, and it is very thrilling, but also it gets really sad at the end and there's not a lot of closure. I tend to like that in a book. I like how this ended. Some people hated it, so keep that in mind. My last 4-star book is Crown of Midnight by Sarah J. Maas. This is the second book in the Throne of Glass series, which I started last year, and I gave the first book 3 stars. I just thought it was okay. It didn't blow my mind. Because the series has been around for so long, I knew that it was a romance-heavy fantasy. And it really is. If you want to read this, you should know that the fantasy plot and the romance plot have equal weight and equal time. The thing that pushed me to give this 4 stars instead of 3 throughout most of the book it was a 3-star, but at the very end there were some twists and reveals that I did not see coming, and that really pushed it to 4 stars for me. I'm already on the 3rd book, and it's, again, 3 stars. It's just okay. But because of the way this ended, I have higher hopes for the rest of the series. I'll also say, and this isn't a spoiler because nothing is determined or decided yet, that I am hardcore shipping Kale and Selena. I think they belong together, and I'm gonna be upset if it doesn't happen. I'm about to get a little spoilery, so if you haven't read these, I'm gonna put up a warning. Just skip ahead or mute it until the warning goes away. One thing that I did not like about this book at all, that actually genuinely upset me, is the fact that the only dark-skinned character, unless I missed something, the only dark-skinned character is now dead. And very literally, her death to be a major motivating point for our white protagonist. And this book is not old enough to have that kind of glaring flaw be glossed over. I'm curious what other people's thoughts on that are, because I feel like that's a really big deal that I've never heard anyone talk about before. I have heard that these books lack diversity, and I would totally agree with that. I think everyone in here is white, or all of our main characters are white anyways. We are introduced to gay characters in this book, but they're minor side characters. What's funny about the twist at the end of this book is that throughout this whole book, I'm thinking about how dumb Selena is, how she never sees anything coming, how she doesn't think hard enough about anything, how obviously there are more things at play and she's just not seeing it. And then at the end of the book, there's this big reveal that Selena is Fae, and I was like, well, I didn't see that coming. When there were very obvious hints throughout the whole book that I just did not pick up on. And then the big reveal after that Selena is Aelin, did not see that shit coming at all. So that's the only reason this got pushed to a 4-star for me. Okay, that's it for the spoilers. I'm continuing on with the series. We'll see how Air of Fire goes. I'm like halfway through it right now. Now on to 5-star books. First is Red Rising by Pierce Brown. This was a reread for me. I read it via audiobook because I have the 2nd and 3rd books, but it's been so long since I read this that I needed a refresh. I gave it 5 stars again because it blew me away just as much. It's like I forgot all of the big events that happened, so they blew me away just as much the 2nd time. This follows our main character, Darrow, in this kind of futuristic society where there's a caste system that's based on color. So Darrow is a red, and they're the lowest of the low in this society, and they've been sort of fooled into being what amounts to slave labor in order to prepare this planet for terraforming, for colonization, and that's what they think they're doing, when in actuality, colonization has already happened. There's a thriving society in this place that the Reds don't know about, so that they'll keep working in the hopes of preparing the planet for their future generations. Darrow finds out about this, and he is chosen to infiltrate the Golds, who are the highest caste in this society, by going to this elite school for the best of the best, and eventually receiving a position as a high-ranking government official, so that they can make change from the inside. All of those events happen within like the first 50 pages, so the rest of the book follows him as he goes to this school and tries to win, so that he can become the highest-ranking person that he can at the very beginning. There's a lot of strategizing, a lot of like political alliances, a lot of betrayal, a lot of murder, but so many characters that I love. Upon rereading, I noticed a character, Severo is his name, that I love so much, and it's like I didn't even notice him the first time around. But I hope he takes a bigger role in the next book because I just love him. And the last book I read, another 5-star reread via audiobook, was The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. This was just randomly available through my library, so I figured I would reread for fun, and it was great. I forgot how good this book was. The characterization is really great. Kepnes and Peeta are both well-rounded and understandable in their decision-making and consistent characters. Kepnes especially. Everything she does makes sense considering her past and her drive. Most of what I remembered from The Hunger Games was from the movie. I didn't realize how much better the book really was until I reread it, because I resent what they did to Peeta in these movies. They made him so sad and so soft, not in a good way. Like, I just remember him being kind of pathetic. But in the book, he just knows his limits. He knows what he is capable of, but he also knows his strong points. And I just think that was really well done. Another thing I'll say about this book is that it does love triangles right. The feelings that Kepnes has for the 2 male characters just make sense based on their personalities. There's a reason Kepnes would like, I always forget his character name. I'm just gonna call him Liam Hemsworth. It makes sense that Kepnes would like Liam because they have been companions for a really long time and they understand each other and they're friends. But her feelings for Peeta also make sense because he is so different from her and he has a strong moral backbone. I just love that about him. I love Peeta, if you guys couldn't tell. But it also makes sense that Liam and Peeta would have feelings for Kepnes. And I think that's what so many books do wrong when they throw in a love triangle. It's like there are three people that they're all in love with each other and you have no idea why, but The Hunger Games does it right. Okay, that's it for all the books I read in January. If you read any of these or you're going to, if they're on your TBR, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear what you think. I post book-related videos every Wednesday. If you like this video, hit like. If you want to keep up to date, hit subscribe. And I'll see you guys next week. Bye!